everyone. Thanks for joining us for the Superintendent's Report. I'm Carol Birdsong, and joining me for this next discussion is Superintendent Jason Golden. And as we record this, we had a school board meeting, our August school board meeting last night. So we'll talk about some of the things that the board covered, some action that was taken, and then we'll just take a look at the school year, because this is the first superintendent's report that we've recorded since we've actually started the school year. So there are things to talk about. So anyway, let's talk about the board meeting first of all, and a lot of, cleaning up, if you will, a lot of finance items last night. So if you will share with our viewers what the board did.
Well, that's a good description, Carol. So we had a number of finance items. We had actually 19 separate items related to law changes from the previous year. So we did have a lot of cleanup, some catch up on some of our policies to make sure we were compliant with the laws. We did not have a meeting in July. Our board does take that break during the summer. We do a lot of work in July, but the board does take the one voting break. So this August meeting is a lot of that. On the finance side, a lot of compliance issues to move some funding from one budget year to the next. But we did have a significant substantive vote related to capital. So the commission in Tennessee is actually the decision maker for funding. Our board makes decisions on how to spend the money that is funded to us by the state and local. And when the board presented their budget to the commission last spring, the commission gave us a partial funding for our capital request, knowing that the state funding had increased this particular year. So the board did make a decision on funding that gap to fill it with the money that the state funded us. So we had about a $3.2 million vote on some of those capital expenses. And it's interesting because we had heard some rumors just in the days leading up to this meeting that the county commission had cut particular items for some of the construction projects. They actually had not cut our construction projects. It was some of the maintenance and technology annual requests we have. But in any event, the board did approve totally funding those with the money that we had from the state. So we're on track for a good school year based on our funding. We were able to give a 6% raise to our faculty and staff. We know that that's a constant battle with increases in cost of living here in Williamson County, with inflation, et cetera. Every year we really do our best to maintain those competitive salaries for our professionals and income for our folks. We're still a little bit understaffed.
I was going to ask you to go ahead and talk about what positions are still needed.
So number one, here locally and regionally and even nationally, we're struggling for bus drivers. On paper, we're staffed at about 82% for our bus drivers. And what that means for us is we have to make some adjustments that we'd really rather not make. We're running first and second loads at many of our schools. Anytime we can finish a load in about a half hour or so, we'll have a bus run that load, get the students to school, and then run a second load before school starts. So many of our students might be on first load, which means they get to school before school starts, a little, maybe a half hour or more early. And then they would be the individuals who got picked up at right as soon as school lets out, and they go on home. And then second load, of course, they get there right before school starts, and they wait in the afternoon until school finishes. So that's a mitigation of our driver shortage. We're also continuing to recruit. It is a real struggle for so many of us in Middle Tennessee to find drivers. One interesting thing about Tennessee is we're not required to provide transportation services other than to students with disabilities who need that specialized transportation because of their limitations in getting on a traditional bus. But we think it's important to make sure we run our buses. So we're struggling in spots. If someone's out sick, we might have to fill in a bus route here or there. We are nowhere near being ready to say, hey, we don't have to do it, so we're not going to do it. We're going to continue to fight that battle because we know that so many of our students ride that bus and parents need that service. So we're constantly communicating with our parents, letting them know when the bus might be late, et cetera, as we fight that. And every time someone asks me about transportation, I mention if you know someone who might be interested in being a bus driver, the hours are a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours in the afternoon. They run elementary route, they run a secondary route in the morning and afternoon, and then their mid-afternoon is free, but we provide full benefits to anyone who takes on that responsibility, and we train everyone, pay full income during that training time as well. So want to get that word out there like I always do. If anyone has any interest in doing that, it's a great job, especially for a retiree. You get your benefits, you've got a good purpose to get up in the morning to take care of children, you've got that break in the middle of the day and you can finish up. You're the first and last for our students to see in the morning before they go to school, and the last person they see when they come home.
And our families love our bus drivers. That is for sure. And I was going to ask you to do a commercial, but you did one already. So thank you for that. We also opened 2 new elementary schools for this school year. So let's talk about Amanda H. North and Arrington Elementary Schools.
We're excited about that. I've been with the district for about 18 years, and even before I was with the district, I knew about Williamson County's growth. One of the stories I tell is when my wife was in elementary school, she actually got rezoned to a new school opening in the late 70s. So there's nothing new under the sun for us with growth, but there's something special about a new school opening. This year we had 2 elementary schools opening in our high growth areas. In Spring Hill, Amanda H. North Elementary School, and then in Arrington, our board named the school after the community of Arrington. And those schools both opened on the first day of kindergarten for our students. Our kindergartners start a week after everyone else. Both construction projects really went down to the wire, and our inspections, just because of the extra work that needed to be done with timelines, with logistics, we were a little bit late, and it's below our standard, but our whole community came together. We were able to transport those students those first few days to some neighboring schools. And again, the special element of that first day of kindergarten, everyone was in the new school. Your office did a couple of videos, some back to school videos for those 2 schools, and they were emotional. I encourage folks, check out those videos of Amanda North Elementary School opening in Arrington Elementary. They were really great. There's always something special about that first day, and with those kindergartners coming at the same time as everyone else to see that new building, it was just a little extra special. Yes. We're now in our 3rd week of school already, amazingly, and things are going great.
Well, thank you for the plug. You gave the communications department a plug last night at the school board meeting to go watch those videos, and they are absolutely wonderful. So you can find them in Focus on the wcs.edu website. You can find them on social media. And speaking of all of the different ways that we communicate, because we do our best to communicate broadly to everyone, because we know in Williamson County, so many of our families do not have school-aged children. But yet we want you to be invested in our public schools. So let's talk about that importance of staying involved in the schools, your local schools, in the school district, and share that there are opportunities for that, even if you don't have children in the district.
Well, we know and we hear so many times from our business leaders how important Williamson County Schools is to the community. Over and over again, we hear stories about people moving here because of Williamson County Schools. By so many measures, we are at the top or very close to the top of the highest performing school districts in the state. And we actually benchmark ourselves against similar districts across the country, from Metro Phoenix, Arizona, to Metro Chicago, to Metro Atlanta. We're comparing ourselves to some of the highest performing school districts in the state. And one thing we know is that our success is attributable in so many ways to our community. Because so many people come here for the schools, they're committed to the schools, they value education, they recognize the importance of that. And we know that so many of our efforts are really a community-wide effort. That when we talk about stakeholders, it's not just the people who are involved in school on a day-to-day basis, it's our whole community. Business leaders are a great example of that. Volunteers are a great example of that. We're going to talk about safety in a few minutes. But as part of that, we want to emphasize that we have a really good protocol for volunteers to come in and help, and we encourage our community to volunteer. We have thousands of volunteers who actually have gone through a little bit of a security process.
That's right.
Because student safety has to be first, and our volunteers recognize that. So when you talk about the community being involved, we're all in this together. We encourage folks to volunteer, especially at those youngest grades at the elementary schools. I will tell you second, we have so many great community activities. Sports have already started. We have girls soccer, middle school tennis is playing, our football teams are playing, cross country has started. Those fall sports are up and running already as we record, even in mid-August. And we know that a lot of folks like to come to the games. We invite everyone, of course. It's a great fundraiser for our programs. Our boosters are unbelievable about the support. So come to our games, check it out.
And just to put it out there for everyone, the gate receipts pay for the sport.
That's right. From a budgeting standpoint, we actually budget our supplements for our coaches and our band directors and our theater directors, et cetera. But for the programs themselves, for the bulk of the work they do, it's about fundraisers. Our booster support, it's about the gate, and with the help of the boosters, we're able to fund those programs.
And you know, sometimes at this time of year, we do have a lot of fundraisers going on, and those go through an approval process. And unfortunately, here in Williamson County, we do have scammers. And they will call local businesses and they will say, we're going to put your logo and your business name on a football and throw out at the ball game, or we're going to put your name on a t-shirt. Please, business owners, before you give any money, call the school. Double check, make sure it is an approved fundraiser. Over the years, we've had so many businesses lose money because if that merchandise does get shipped to us, we dispose of it because it is not a true fundraiser.
You know, there's actually a Tennessee law that makes it illegal for a business to use a school name, a public school name, without permission, without being part of a fundraiser program. But that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Often, it will be a representative from some company that we track down from another state, and we sometimes have to send cease and desist letters. Ultimately, the way to stop that is for businesses to call and ask, are you truly supporting the school? We really do depend on that. I have conversations sometimes with folks who've moved from other states, and I talk about our funding at the state level. And compared to so many other states, funding for schools is smaller. Our per pupil expenditure is less compared to so many other states, and sometimes it's a surprise to folks. We really do depend on the booster support, and so we encourage our businesses, double check. And we want your support. You will probably hear from some boosters, and if you're just in the least bit suspicious, give our principal a call. Give your principal a call and double check. We don't want to know. We want a yes, but there's some wisdom in double checking.
That's right. That's just one of the safety measures that we deal with here in Williamson County Schools. Last night, Superintendent Golding, you talked about some other safety initiatives that we have taken on in partnership with the Williamson County Sheriff's Office this year. So let's talk and educate our viewers about all of the different elements of school safety that we deal with.
Well, when I talk to our school administration in our planning for the summer at all our 52 schools and talk to our faculty members, we focused on two main things for this school year. One was directly related to instruction, a focus on student learning. The second is that piece that we can never forget, that we all have to pay attention to every single day, and it is improving safety for all students. So we spent some time talking about physical safety. Now the layers of safety are many. Mental health issues, addressing bullying behaviors, addressing illegal discrimination behaviors, making sure that students have supports, as much as we can at the school level, are supporting families as needed. But that physical security is something that we spent some time talking about yesterday. The state legislature just in the past session earlier this year initiated a number of new laws related to school safety. And a lot of what they initiated and put into code were those those actions that we've been administering ourselves over the course of years, but it's good to see that a lot of those protocols have been institutionalized. So one thing is going to be very obvious to families is what we call access control. We have one entrance. State law actually now requires one entrance for visitors. We have cameras set up where you push the button, you identify yourselves, you're going to have to show your ID, and we will go through the process of making sure that there's a purpose for the visitor to increase that student safety. All the other exterior doors are to be locked or actually physically monitored by someone. So for example, when school starts, we'll have multiple entrances with somebody at those entrances, because often the buses might drop off at one entrance and the car riders come in at another entrance, etc. So access is a very big issue. We have talked about doors aren't being propped open anymore, and that's a key emphasis for us. So that access control safety is something that is going to be a key focus for us. But in addition to that, we did an analysis over kind of our common challenges that we faced last year with student behaviors. And in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department and with the local district attorney's office, we created some targeted public service announcements, for lack of a better phrase, some 2-minute videos about some of those key challenges we've experienced. And that includes threats, that includes sexting behaviors on devices, cell phones, etc. That includes extortion that's described as sextortion, demanding something from a peer or another or a student in exchange for not disclosing something about them. Some really bad behaviors that really, from an adult perspective, fit the definition of criminal behavior. And so those messages have been prepared for families. We released them just a few weeks ago, right as school started. We're going to continue that discussion. And our main theme is it's time to talk. It's time to talk about threats. The state has a new law that if a student makes a threat to harm 2 or more people, it's actually a zero tolerance offense now, that a student will get suspended for the year. Even if it's a joke, it's very difficult to discern what's a joke and what's not when it comes to threats. So we're making it a point to our parents to have that talk with your children about making sure those students don't make jokes of threats and don't threaten to harm someone, because there will be consequences for that. We have to be more careful and more thoughtful about that. We literally had hundreds of threats that fit that new state definition last year, and so that's a focus point.
And unfortunately, Superintendent Golden, we've already had instances, 2 weeks into the school year, of threats, of sexting, potentially sextortion. So these are the reasons that we produced the videos with the sheriff's office. They came to us and said, we need help reaching our families. We need help with our parents talking with their children about these things. And we just need to be united in encouraging our families to have those discussions. And there are just so many different consequences of this behavior, those behaviors.
Harm in a school is one of our biggest concerns. We know across the nation and really across the world that's a worry that needs to be addressed. And every time there's a threat, we do investigate. Our local law enforcement personnel, they do investigate. I sometimes hear stories about a search of a home, even on a weekend, if a student makes a threat, because every one of those threats has to be followed up on. We know that human effort and safety is never going to be perfect, but it's going to be thoughtful, and it's going to be addressed every single time, because we just cannot short that effort to make sure students are safe. And it's a community effort, and so we are trying to emphasize everyone has a part in that. And so I mentioned the talk with their children about addressing threats. The opposite side of that is true as well. If you hear a threat, make sure school folks or local law enforcement knows about it. I mentioned the weekend. Sometimes we'll hear those over the weekend. It gives law enforcement an opportunity to investigate, to make sure that when students come back to school that next Monday, they're coming to a safe environment. So again, have the talk. Make sure that if you hear a threat, communicate that to local authorities so that we all as a team can do our best to make sure our schools are safe.
And you can find those videos on every school's website. If you go to www.wcs.edu, under safety, you will see those videos. We hope that you watch them and have the talk. Also, along those lines, we are going to be having a talk. You are going to be having a talk with the business and community members, if you will. It's the annual State of the District Address that you will be giving in September with the Williamson County Chamber of Commerce.
So every year, the Williamson County Chamber of Commerce, Williamson Inc. is their corporate name, holds what I think of as two main community meetings. One occurs in July, if I'm not mistaken. Rogers Anderson, the county mayor, gives a state of the county. 2 months later, in September, we do a State of the Schools address where we update our business leaders on where the schools are. And Dr. David Snowden from Franklin Special School District and I both present. Some people might not be aware that there is another school system in the county, Franklin Special. It is a smaller geographic system. It serves grades K through 8, and as their students finish 8th grade, based on our zoning, they either go to Franklin High School or Centennial High School. They have somewhere around 3,500 or so students. We have a little over 42,000, but we work as a team on a regular basis. So we're going to present State of the Schools. There are always brag points as the data comes in, but typically what I talk about is the successes we've had, where we are, and where we're headed, with our focus points for the year, communication with our community leaders about where our needs are, where our challenges are, because again, we're all in this together, knowing that the community values education.
Speaking of communication, we hope that you, if you have not already, sign up for our In Focus email newsletter. It is the main source of district information, and we send out that email on Tuesdays. So you can still sign up right now today. Just go to our website, wcs.edu, and do so. Our school and district website, such a valuable source of information. And we also have a mobile app. So perhaps you want to go to one of those football games or volleyball matches. And if you go to the mobile app, you can select a school event to go in and attend. So you'll see the school's initials at the front, and then you'll see information about any public event there. Also on the mobile app, there is a tip line. So if there is someone, as you were talking about, who wanted to see something and say something, you can utilize that tip line, and that will come in and be shared with our SROs. We have not given a plug to our SROs, and we truly need to do that. So as we wrap up this conversation, talk about how valuable it is to have school resource officers.
Well, number one, you mentioned the app. I used that app Friday night, just making sure I was going to the right school for a game, who had the home game. So again, I do encourage folks to use that app. When we talk about safety, I mentioned the layers. We know that there's no substitute for people when it comes to safety. You can harden your building, et cetera, but you ultimately need people. And our SROs are a key component. And I can't say enough about the value in those SROs. So often I'll visit a school, I have a conversation with the SRO. The SROs know their role. They develop relationships with students. They make sure that they're visible, but they know their ultimate role is to protect everyone, and they train on that. They know that if there's a problem, they go to the problem. I'm so impressed with Sheriff Dusty Rhodes and the Sheriff's Office for the work that they do. Like so many other positions, staffing is a challenge. They find a way to make sure someone is at the school every time. And of course, they're available at extracurricular activities as well. There is no substitute for people. Our SROs are an integral part of that. And one nice thing the state did, the state legislature, just in the past session, with recommendations from the governor, they were able to budget some additional funds for the sheriff's department. It's not money that goes to us, it's funding that goes to the sheriff's department to help offset the cost of our SROs. So there was actually a grant this year where sheriff's offices across the state, or police departments, if they happen to be the SROs in particular cities, could apply for a grant up to $75,000 per school to fund SROs. Our SROs and our county commission and our sheriff's office and the schools have been working on that over the years, and it actually was a good offset for the sheriff's office. I actually had to sign off on that grant for the sheriff, and I did so gladly because we could not get along in our safety plans without those law enforcement officers.
Good information. So the message here is stay safe, stay informed, and stay involved, I think, as we begin this wonderful school year. So Superintendent Golden, thank you for your conversation today, and thank you all for joining us.